If you're fond of sand dunes and salty air, quaint little villages here and there, you're sure to fall in love with old Cape Cod. If you like the taste of a lobster stew, served by a window with an ocean view, you're sure to fall in love with old Cape Cod. Winding roads that seem to beckon you, miles of green beneath the skies of blue, church bells chiming on a Sunday morn remind you of the town where you were born. If you spend an evening you want to stay, watching the moonlight on Cape Cod Bay, you're sure to fall in love with old Cape Cod. Come along with me to our campground and see how sweet a walk on the canal can be. You're sure to fall in love with old Cape Cod. Winding roads that seem to beckon you, miles of green beneath the skies of blue, church bells chiming on a Sunday morn remind you of the town where you were born.
That thing over there, that looks like the lighthouse from Lost. It's a monument. In fact, it's called Pilgrim's Monument. The Pilgrim Monument was built when granite stones from a castle washed up in Provincetown harbour. The story of how a castle managed to travel across the Atlantic and wash up on shore is an interesting one to say the least. In 1505, the Canary Islands in Spain were part of the Kingdom of Castile. The smallest island, Dratana Demon, housed a castle fort for the Count of Trastamara, King of Castile. The Count had been exiled there by his half-brother, the Duke of Recapulus, after overthrowing the Count from his throne. but the Count made preparations to shift his castle off the island of Dratana Demon and into the very capital of Madrid. Such a miraculous move with a castle full of soldiers would surely give the Count the element of surprise. Along with exiled Visigoth witches, the Count employed engineering assistance from the great Leonardo da Vinci, who wasn't merely a painter at this point in history, but a man of science. His patented movable barricade system was famous for protecting cities from attack, but this time his science would be used for an offensive invasion, or so he thought. Success did arrive with the Count's castle displacement shifting off the island, but failure arrived quicker when it, along with the Count's army, failed to materialize in the center of Madrid. That is where the historical facts end, with the missing castle. It is now with my theory that bridges the gap between that incident and the writings of Viking settlers on Cape Cod. The Norsemen called Cape Cod the promontory of Vinland. There, around the 16th century, strange rocks washed up on shore along with Spanish imperial skeletons. The superstitious Vikings took the washed up bones and castle debris to be a sign from the devil. To escape his wrath, they built the castle up with the skeletons inside the walls into its present-day location. The castle stood exactly as it had in the Canary Islands, except for Leonardo da Vinci's dematerialization contraption. The Vikings instead took that to their nearby village because it was shiny. But the old phrase, beware shiny objects, hadn't been coined yet, and Da Vinci's dematerialization contraption began working again. This time, it left the castle in place, but the settlement of Norsemen all vanished from the Cape of Vinland and appeared in Ravenna, Italy, right in the middle of the Battle of Ravenna, between the French and the Spanish. The Vikings were no friends of the Spanish, so they allied themselves with the French, and with the extra military advantage of Viking warriors, the French descended on the Spanish infantry from all sides. The Spanish lost the battle, and the French, Germans, and Vikings won occupation of Italy. And on that faraway cape, the castle awaited, hunted by the spirits of the Castellan soldiers. After 100 years of being feared by the Nasset tribe, the castle would be called a monument after the arrival of the Pilgrims. 1620. The Mayflower anchored here at Provincetown in 1620. The Pilgrims thought they had arrived in New Amsterdam, yet the land was in fact known as Michon by the Nasset tribe of Native Americans who lived there. But even after realizing the error of their ways, the Pilgrims still found time to make enemies of the Native Americans by stealing their corn and robbing their graves before being chased away inland to Plymouth, and thus Provincetown became known as a false start United States. So, I guess this is where America started. Pretty cool, I guess. Well, that's about it. Let's go.